Most of the videos I post on this channel review privacy tools or explain technology related to government surveillance and surveillance capitalism. But the tagline for this channel, The Intersection of Business, Technology, and Society, is broader than just privacy issues. While I will continue to focus most of my videos on privacy-related topics, this video is the first episode in my Signals and Society series I will be posting from time to time. This series explores how technology is reshaping society in significant and all too often harmful ways. The common denominator throughout this series is each video will examine the interaction between technology and society through the lens of a book, movie, or a television/streaming episode. I'm Dr. John Padfield, an engineer, former state legislator, and business professor. Today we will examine the enduring lessons from a March 1960 episode of the Twilight Zone called The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. No city or even state is ever identified in this episode. The opening scene makes it clear Maple Street could be anywhere. It is a typical, seemingly peaceful neighborhood full of people just like me and you. That is exactly what makes this episode so relatable, enduring, and chilling. The episode begins on a late Saturday afternoon when something bright streaks across the sky making a loud noise. Nobody knows what it was, but Steve, played by Claude Akins, tells everyone it was probably just a meteor. Shortly after the object passes overhead, the people on Maple Street realize they have lost power and telephone service to their homes, and even their battery-powered radios are not picking up any radio stations. Steve talks to a couple of neighbors trying to figure out what is happening. A crowd starts to form as they are joined by other neighbors who are really stressing out about the unusual things happening on their quiet street. Steve decides to drive down to the police station to see if the police know anything about what's happening, but his car won't start, and that adds to the growing anxiety among his neighbors. Steve is as confused as everyone else about what is happening, but he is the voice of reason, calm and curious, seeking to understand rather than emotionally reacting to his circumstances. To help calm everyone's fears, Steve offers to walk down to the police station to see if they know what is going on. That is when a teenage boy named Tommy begs Steve to not go because they don't want you to leave. Tommy explains in every comic book he has read about aliens from outer space, they prevent anyone from leaving except the aliens who are sent in advance to live among humans and prepare for the alien invasion. As the increasingly scared crowd debates the merit of Tommy's concerns, a car belonging to Les Goodman starts all by itself. The crowd resembles a mob as they storm across the street to confront Les and demand he explain why his car is running when nobody else's car will start. Les claims he has no idea how or why his car started. A woman in the mob then tells everyone how sometimes when she wakes up at night, she sees Les standing in his front yard, by himself, staring at the stars like he is looking for something. Les becomes defensive and explains that he suffers from insomnia. Something as innocent as standing in your own yard, looking up at the night sky would not be suspicious to a rational person. But when people are scared, they quit being rational and start looking for threats. When that happens, even the most innocent of actions can be interpreted as evidence of guilt. As the sun sets, a neighbor named Charlie sets up a chair in his yard so he can watch Les's house all night long. Charlie has become the self-appointed leader of the mob, and he tells the whole neighborhood who they should and shouldn't trust. Steve confronts Charlie about the damage he is causing by making baseless accusations against Les and others. As you are probably already aware, you often make a target out of yourself when you stand up for someone the mob has already passed judgment upon. Another neighbor tells everyone he is suspicious of Steve because Steve's wife told his wife that Steve sometimes spends hours in the basement working on some type of two-way radio. The mob begins to turn on Steve and they demand to know who he is talking to on his radio. The increasingly hostile argument is interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps coming from the darkness down the street. Charlie grabs his rifle and shoots into the darkness in the direction of the approaching footsteps. He hits something that groans and collapses on the street. When the mob approaches the lifeless form on the ground, they discover it is one of their neighbors who had walked several blocks away to see if the power was on over there. The mob turns on Charlie, speculating about what the man he shot may have learned that Charlie didn't want him sharing with everyone. Suddenly, one person's lights come on, and the mob turns on that person, demanding to know why their lights are on. The terrified mob grabs anything they can use as a weapon to fight the monsters around them. In just a matter of a few hours, the peaceful neighborhood on Maple Street transformed into a mob of scared, suspicious, and angry people. As the people on Maple Street violently attack one another and destroy each other's homes, the camera pulls back to a hilltop overlooking the city, where two human-looking aliens are watching the lethal chaos below. The more experienced alien explains to his apprentice all they have to do is stop a few machines and radios and telephones, then throw them into darkness for a few hours, and humans will attack the most dangerous enemy they can find, themselves. The aliens board their ship while discussing how Earth is full of maple streets, and they will go from one to another, letting humans destroy themselves. Rod Serling concludes this episode with what I consider the most profound closing narration of the entire Twilight Zone series. The tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices, to be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill, and suspicion can destroy, and a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat has a fallout all its own, for the children and the children yet unborn. And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone. If this episode feels uncomfortably familiar, it's because although technology has changed a lot since 1960, human nature hasn't. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street first aired 65 years ago, long before anyone had a smartphone or social media apps. My point is, as I frequently tell my students, technology itself is always neutral. Technology is simply a tool, therefore it is incapable of being inherently good or evil. Take, for example, the ancient technology of an axe. It can be used to save lives just as easily as it can be used to take lives. What technology really does is speed up whatever the user of the technology wants to accomplish, whether those things are positive or negative. The people on Maple Street in 1960, just like people around the world today, are naturally frightened by things happening around us that don't make any sense. Nature abhors a vacuum, so in the absence of a logical explanation, we tend to fill the void with speculation and by assigning bad intentions to others. As humans, we don't need anyone to intentionally try to scare or manipulate us for profit or power. We are quite capable of doing that all by ourselves. But the truth is, there are people who use fear for profit and power, and they thrive on using technology to speed up their results. What Maple Street experienced in hours, social media can produce in minutes. In his 2008 book, The Science of Fear, How Culture of Fear Manipulates Your Brain, Daniel Gardner discussed what he calls the merchants of fear. Politicians who use fear to get you to vote for them or to get legislation passed under the guise of public safety. The media who knows bad news gets more click than good news, and corporations who capitalize on our fears to sell products. As we approach Christmas, I find it fascinating that two of the most common things Jesus is recorded saying in the Bible are, "Do not be afraid," and "Do not fear." It's almost like Jesus knew how prone mankind is to being afraid and how some people might try to manipulate us through that fear. Fear produces compliance, and it is far easier to control people who are afraid than those who are not. One of the key takeaways from The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is just how contagious fear is. Fear tends to spread much farther and faster than reliable information. That has always been true, but it is especially true of digital media, where algorithms are designed to reward content that is frequently viewed and shared, and one of the fastest ways to go viral is by spreading fear. Another takeaway is how suspicion, rumors, and assumptions tend to replace real, meaningful conversation. It takes time and effort to understand people who hold different views than us. It is so much quicker and easier to just label, ignore, and or demonize others rather than meeting them in person and engaging them in calm, honest, face-to-face conversation. When the bulk of our social interactions are online, where big tech monitors, records, and monetizes them, it is easy to fall into an echo chamber where we only engage with people who agree with us. It may feel comforting to know we must be right because everyone we know agrees with us, but as a society, these polarized echo chambers are tearing us apart. One of the best but most depressing movies I have ever seen is Jason Bateman's 2012 movie Disconnect. That movie is a hyper-realistic portrayal of what happens when people are connected online but disconnected in real life. Again, technology is not the villain, but many villains use technology to fan the flames of division for their own purposes. I am absolutely convinced there are people in positions of power around the world who are intent on keeping us divided against each other because it is the best way to keep us too distracted to pay attention to what they are doing to all of us. Trust me, I know this can feel overwhelming, but the best way you and I can prevent this is by working in our own neighborhoods to prevent this. The Christmas season is often associated with gatherings of family, friends, and neighbors. What a golden opportunity to set disagreements aside and to start building or rebuilding strong, personal, face-to-face relationships. And maybe this year the greatest gift we can all give isn't some new piece of technology, but second chances and genuine human connection. If you enjoyed this video, I invite you to join me for Office Hours, my live stream at 7 p.m. Eastern on the first and third Monday of each month, and whenever there is major breaking news related to privacy and technology. These are a few of my upcoming videos, so if you are interested in them, please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss them when they are posted. My first Brushfires of Freedom tour stop of 2026 will take place on Friday, January 2nd, in the newly remodeled party room at Burnsy's Bar and Grill, just a few miles west of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am also planning several tour stops across Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama in mid-March, and a West Coast tour this summer, ending in Las Vegas just in time for DEF CON. I will have many other tour stops coming up as well, so please visit brushfirestour.com to sign up for announcements as tour dates and locations become available. This was the first episode in my Signals and Society series. What books, movies, or TV episodes would you like to see me cover in future videos in this series? I can't wait to read your comments.